Good evening, everyone. Deputy Mayor Richard Malash chairing the meeting this evening because our mayor is feeling under the weather this evening. So he asked me if I could chair the meeting this evening. So we'll start closed meeting report. We had a closed meeting this evening, educational training for council, and that was just prior to this meeting, or this meeting that we're calling to order right now. Any declarations of conflict of interest from this evening? I'm going to be claiming a conflict of interest on 8.7, clerk's report on fees for civil marriage officiants, and that is because my wife is a marriage officiant for the town of Essex. Need an adoption of the published agenda for this evening, March the 5th. Moved by Councillor Snively and supported by Councillor Bjorkman. Questions, Councillor Bondi, or additions?
Thank you, Chair Malash. Just when the time is right, I'd like to put forward a notice of motion later on in the agenda. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there any other anticipated motions? Notice of motions? Councillor Vokes has one as well. So there's two. Okay. So, and we can put those forward, Mr. Ogier, at the end when we get to that section?
Yeah, under Article 15.
Okay, thank you. So, all in favor of accepting the agenda for this evening? That's carried, thank you. Adoption of the minutes from the regular council meeting from February 20th. Moved by Councillor Vokes, supported by Councillor Snively. All in favor? That's carried. Adoption of the minutes from the consideration report on February 20th. Moved by Councillor Vokes, supported by Councillor Bjorkman. Any questions? All in favor? That's carried. This evening we have a couple of public presentations, and we are going to first start off with the Harrow Rotary presentation. We have Peggy Golden and Corey Brandhall here this evening to do the presentation. If you want to step forward, along with our Fire Chief Rick Ardnell and our Deputy Chief Rick Malott.
Through your worship, I'd just like to give a little talk on why Corey and Peggy are here this evening. We've been working with the Harrow Rotary for over the past year, and they have come through, and they've donated enough money to purchase a intelligence training system. It's a fire extinguisher training system. For years, Essex Fire's been using a pail with, nobody heard this, diesel fuel and rags. So this is a very safe way to be able to provide extinguisher training for the community, and it's my pleasure to introduce both of them tonight and thank them very much for all the hard work they did for us in the community, and it's terrific to have them here tonight.
Thank you. And with that said, do you have anything that you wanted to say, or? Okay, wonderful. Come on up front here and we'll get started with it. All council members up there to take a picture.
Ladies, I want to tell you something and to the staff. I see you presenting that check tonight, and I want you to know we just went through budget deliberations, and money doesn't come easy for us. Like, we struggle sometimes to get the dollars to cover the dollar. And I see you standing before us with that check tonight, presenting it to the Essex Fire Department. So I want to tell you on behalf of council and administration in the town of Essex, we're so humble and so grateful for the fact of the work and the consideration by you standing there and presenting that to us. Because it comes with more value than just that piece of plastic cardboard it's written on tonight. And I want you to know that, and it's important you know that. Because we work hard on doing everything we do, but people like you make it a lot easier for us. So I personally, myself, I want to say to you, thank you. I really do appreciate you doing that. Thank you very much.
Very well said, Councillor Vokes. And let's all go up and take a picture with these wonderful people that are helping out the community. Jeez, nothing, guys. Stone cold, beautiful thing. One last big round of applause for Harrow Rotary. Now we're on to our second presentation of the evening. That's Essex Region Conservation Authority. And this evening we have Richard Wyma with us from IRCA. Welcome.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Malosh and Council. It's great. Harrow Rotary was one of the first adopters and first partners that we had when we started our Greenway movement back in my earlier life with Essex Region Conservation Authority back in the mid-90s. So it's always great to have Rotary clubs. They've been supportive of so many organizations and municipalities in our region, and we definitely benefit from them. I did want to start by saying in December of last year, after a number of years of review and discussion, the province of Ontario passed Bill 139, the Building Better Communities and Conserving Watersheds Act. And that was a new act that recognized, and it made some changes to the Conservation Authorities Act that recognizes that conservation authorities have played a vital role in supporting the conservation, restoration, development, and management of Ontario's natural resources for over 70 years. But more than that, the new act that came out acknowledged that the continued growth of our municipalities and communities in Ontario relies heavily on the work that conservation authorities do. It recognizes that conservation authorities are vital partners with communities in issues in dealing with response to issues related to climate change, natural hazards, wetlands, sustainable development, green infrastructure, climate change, and so many other programs. And in recognition of this act, in recognition of these programs, the new act includes amendments that modernizes the Conservation Authorities Act to be able to further this work in a new modern environment. The last act, or the original act, was formed in 1946, so obviously some things have changed a little bit since then. In Essex Region, our programs continue to demonstrate an ongoing and consistent response to very real and serious problems that we face. Land degradation, natural area coverage, flooding and erosion. These were the same challenges that we faced when we were established in 1973. And today, when we look at the issues and problems that we're addressing, things like water quality in the Great Lakes, climate adaptation, sustainable growth and development, these are all issues now that we must look at a little differently when we're considering how do we as a conservation authority continue to meet the growing and changing needs of our municipalities. So each year we continue to develop and deliver programs and projects that address those challenges, and 2017 was no different, as you'll see in our annual report and annual report video that I'll try to show you right now. Maybe not successfully.
Sat in place, and it was storm after storm, and they got 1 to 2 months worth of rain in 4 hours. I think extremes are going to become more extreme. So when we get the cold, it's really cold. When we get the rain, it's heavy rains.
Some real benefits to the people of Ontario. Stronger oversight and accountability for Conservation Authority decision-making. More clarity and consistency in the services that conservation authorities provide. And increased public engagement at conservation authorities to ensure the people have a voice in their local conservation authorities.
2017 was the final year, sort of alluded to in that report. It was the final year of our 5-year sustainability plan, which was called The Way Forward. And as you'll recall, over the last 5 years, that plan has helped us as an authority address some accumulated issues and challenges that we had. And it allowed us to position the authority more effectively to respond to the next generation of conservation challenges. And some of the highlights that you saw in that last video in particular, we created a capital plan and capital plan reserves that allowed us to fund infrastructure replacement at Holiday Beach with the new washroom. The Chrysler Canada Greenway resurfacing that happened this past year that you saw in the video there, which included $250,000 of Ontario 150 matching grant program. We also, over the last 5 years, completed repairs on the Greenway at Mill Creek. With DFO, we replaced the netting at the golf course. We extended the Chrysler Canada Greenway through the transfer station to connect to the town of Leamington Trails to make that connection happen. Last year as well, with the capital funds that we did have, we completed the Rotary 1918 Centennial Hub that linked the Herb Gray Parkway trails with the Chrysler Canada Greenway, as well as trails in LaSalle and Tecumseh. And that was another project that included over $775,000 in external funding. We completed, as you all know very well in this municipality, the Cipher Systems Group Greenway, which is a $1.1 million project, and we couldn't have done it without the support of the Conservation Foundation and again, the leadership of the town of Essex in coming forward without even asking, and with the support of $100,000 towards that project. That was later matched with Amherstburg and collectively matched with the Canada 150 program. This year, and just as an aside, we'll also be building that foot and bike bridge over the drain at the Highway 3 entrance so we can make that drain crossing and make that trail experience a little bit more seamless. We also completed accessible trails and boardwalks at Cope-Begarin Conservation Area, and right now we're working on Maidstone Conservation Area. And we upgraded the roofs and windows at multiple buildings out at John R. Park Homestead. We restructured the parking area to accommodate more cars. And we undertook some new siding at Hillman Marsh. So a tremendous amount of investment in our conservation areas that had been lacking for a number of years. Secondly, we eliminated our historic accumulated operational deficit, and that was as high as $478,000 over 5 years ago. And so over the course of the last 5 years, we have now completely eliminated that deficit. We restructured as an organization. We consolidated from 7 to 4 departments. We eliminated 3 director positions as well as an executive administrative position. And we redirected the savings from those programs to our key programs that had declining or at-risk third-party funding. And that initiative in itself has helped enhance IRCA's research and science capacity, which has resulted in new partnerships with the University of Windsor and the Great Lakes Institute, researching into possible contamination sources and identification of environmental factors, as an example, that are contributing to beach closures, rural stewardship programs, including the Great Lakes Agricultural Stewardship Initiative in Cedar Creek, and numerous water quality studies and water quality monitoring projects, including the Kingsville-Leamington Nutrient Study. So a tremendous amount of work has come out, and as we move forward with the release, which I'll talk about in a minute, of the Domestic Action Plan, there'll be new opportunities related to phosphorus. And so we've aligned ourselves to be able to address those issues. The work that we do continues to be guided by our strategic plan, and our 2016 to 25 strategic plan sets out 45 actions based on the 5 themes that we'll hear. And I just want to highlight a couple of the projects in each of those 5 theme areas that we'll be working on in 2017. First, and you saw reference to this in the video as well, and certainly as a municipality, you've experienced this over the years, especially last year's storm as well, which hit McGregor very hard. That climate will continue to change, and we have to continue to prepare to adapt to its impacts. So in 2017, we had board support, and we're moving forward with a new climate change specialist that will help lead the development of a regional climate change strategy that will begin to address and identify what some of the impacts and vulnerabilities we have as a region, working closely with municipal partners at identifying what are some of the implementation needs and priorities, and what new potential funding supports might be out there to help us do this work. We're going to explore the needs and options for updating our floodplain mapping for the region, making sure that we need to look at, does mapping reflect overland as well as the rainfall-based flooding that we've experienced. We've actually, with the budget, we will be hiring a new regulations engineering technician that will provide added support for stormwater reviews, drainage reviews, and related engineering infrastructure reviews. Similarly, with flood forecasting, we're working now with partners to look at, is there an opportunity to develop a shared climate station network so that collectively all the municipalities in this region will have access to up-to-date information on the weather as it's happening in our region. Secondly, we heard that the Great Lakes are our most significant resource and more must be done to improve water quality. Again, this year we'll be restoring over 100 acres of upland habitat. We'll be creating at least 5 acres of wetland and completing the Sturgeon Creek wetland with Caldwell First Nations. You saw that in the video, turning the old marina into a wetland. We'll also be completing construction of a new 10-acre wetland at Hillman Marsh. And this one's a little different because it's not only a wetland, but we're actually working closely with the University of Windsor at introducing some phosphorus monitoring projects and phosphorus removal projects in that wetland so that we can see how well wetlands can actually help manage and mitigate against phosphorus and nutrient loading in the Great Lakes. We're developing a new shoreline management strategy on the Detroit River and plans that we're working on right now for a new 70-acre wetland rehabilitation project at the mouth of the Canard. Later this month, actually in a couple of weeks, we'll be releasing the 2018 Watershed Report Card. This is something that conservation authorities across Ontario do every 5 years. And it's a report card that provides a snapshot of the health of our watersheds based on a suite of provincial watershed health indicators. And it helps us communicate trends and highlights where actions are needed. And I can tell you now that it'll show that there will be a continued need to do work to improve our watersheds. We still have a long ways to go. And as I mentioned earlier, in February of this year, Canada and Ontario released the Lake Erie Action Plan for reducing phosphorus levels in Lake Erie. That was the plan that they put in place to address the 40% reduction target that was set under the Great Lakes Water Quality Agreement. As administration at IRCA, we work closely with senior levels of government at a number of different levels and committees to ensure that the resultant plan included actions and program support for our ongoing monitoring and science, but also directed funds and support into this area because we know we have some priority watersheds that are identified in this area. We also know from our strategic planning process that our landscapes and habitats are among the most significant in Canada. And we need to do more to address those and more to protect them. So in 2018, we'll complete the development of a new management plan for Cedar Creek Conservation Area and the various related lands that we've secured over the last number of years. We'll also be developing new business plans for the John R. Park Homestead and Holiday Beach Conservation Area to identify and support new investment, perhaps in infrastructure and visitor services. And I know many of you were out at the Maple Festival at John R. Park this past weekend, and you'll know, if you pardon the pun, that our facilities are tapped out when it comes to the ability to handle that number of crowds that we do have. So we need to start taking a look at what some of those new investments that we might be able to make, where are some of the opportunities to maybe support those new investments so that we can address that increased growth and use of our conservation areas. And we do also very much appreciate the town of Essex, again, coming forward, not just with this celebration of Maple Month, but your ongoing support for the John R. Park Homestead is great. Certainly people like Ron Rogers have been a long member of our John R. Park committee, and I know Ron was driving a vehicle this weekend, traveling back and forth, so I don't think he actually got a chance to enjoy Maple Fest as many others did, including myself, and my 7-year-old in particular really enjoyed the Maple, but we do appreciate all the various support that this council provides us. The 2018 budget is also restoring our Clean Water Green Spaces acquisition funding to support more securement of key lands and allow us to leverage that funding with other partners in keeping with our land securement strategy. And we're also increasing capacity for operations and maintenance of our greenways. Over the last year in particular, we added almost 30 kilometers of new greenways to this region, and we need to make sure that we can maintain and operate those greenways in a way that the visitors and the users of those greenways expect. Fourth, we need to ensure that our communities grow and expand sustainably. In 2017, we introduced our Place for Life policies, which are our suite of policies that integrate our planning and development, as well as our other program policies, all into one package. It's a very ambitious project, and we'll continue the consultation on that over the course of the year, and hopefully finalize those policies by the end of this year. We're also completing official plan updates for Lakeshore, Kingsville, Tecumseh, and Leamington, and we're providing advice and direction to member municipalities on over 750 Planning Act applications that we receive. Development review, we're completing reviews of over 1,000 Section 28 permit applications for stormwater management, commercial, industrial, and residential development, large-scale greenhouse development, over 150 municipal drainage act reviews, and responding to over 1,300 general water resource-related requests. Just to put those numbers into perspective, those are on par with the conservation authorities like the Toronto region and the Grand region, which have a tremendous support staff to deal with the issues that they're facing, to deal with those numbers, and certainly a larger program capacity than we do. So we're very, very effective at the work that we do in addressing our planning and development related issues. Fifth, we continue to hear that IRCA is a sustainable, resilient and valued agency, and we're going to be continuing to do that work, building on our sustainability plan that ended last year. We'll be developing a new 5-year plan that makes sure that we can find ways of supporting new initiatives that are identified in our strategic plan, and to ensure that we can fund and find the appropriate resources and manage them in an effective way to deal with those outcomes. Part of that will be updating our tangible capital asset report and our capital plan, so we can make sure that our investments over the next 5 years will not only replace the infrastructure that's there, but also take a look at where some of those key new investments might need to be. In a couple of weeks, we'll actually be launching a new website that we've been developing over the last year, which will go a long way at improving customer service, usability, and accessibility, and continuing to build on our Place for Life brand. And some of the highlights of that new website will be related to some online tools that we currently don't have available and accessible. So there'll be a lot more interactive and a lot more opportunity for people to engage IRCA through the website. We've also changed some of our capacity up at the front so that we're going to be able to focus administration on desk services and customer service, and at the same time focus some of the existing capacity to ensure that we can continue to push out the permits and the plan reviews that we do have from a clerk and administrative perspective. And finally, we're updating and reviewing all of our operational administrative policies to ensure that not only are we continuing to be consistent with legislation, but that we continue to reflect public sector best practices in the work that we do. Ultimately, IRCA has demonstrated a history of balancing projects and priorities with local investment, and we continue to understand the challenges municipalities face, as was expressed earlier this evening by Councillor Vokes. For example, we implemented our 5-year sustainability plan, including the introduction of capital and operational reserves, eliminating the deficit and organizational stabilization with no increase in levy contributions directly attributable to those outcomes. So we achieved all of those results with no increase in levy directly related to those projects. Our 2018 budget that's in front of you was approved by our board in February. It totals a little over $9.2 million, which includes a total levy contribution of about $3.1 million, which is an increase of $101,000, which works out to 9 cents per household. And of that, just as an aside, $51,000 of that $101,000 is allocated for operations, whereas the other $50,000 is for future asset replacement. So we continue to be responsible in managing our assets going forward. A couple of notes with respect to the budget. It includes over $4.2 million in leverage funding for projects described. This represents over 40% of the total IRCA budget, and when you combine that with fee-for-service revenues, almost 75% of IRCA's budget is funded through non-levy sources of funding. Those annual reviews for programs and services consistently rank IRCA in the top 10 of all 36 conservation authorities, whereas at the same time, our operational levy funding our operations is less than 30%, which places IRCA at the bottom 5 of all conservation authorities, which is well below the provincial average, which is around 45%. When you take that away from the household and look at it at a per capita perspective, in 2016, the average CA levy supporting operations was $15.62. IRCA's levy supporting operations was only $8.47 per capita. So we're operating at about half per capita of what the average of conservation authorities are across the province, and still achieving top 10 in terms of programs and revenues that we bring in. Given our daily reliance on our natural resources, the projects, programs, and priorities that we implement, we believe, and we believe our region believes, are critically important to our region. We are making a difference. We do need to celebrate our successes, and we've had many. And we need to increase the scope, scale, and intensity of our joint efforts. We ultimately want to create a place that we can be proud of and celebrate, one that we can call home for life. I'm certainly happy to respond to any questions if there are any.
Thank you, Mr. Wyma. You've certainly proved to us that IRCA is going to be very busy over 2018. I first have Councillor Bjorkman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Wyma, thank you very much for coming out tonight and providing that overview. Just a few of the things that really matter to Essex Centre and the things that happen. When we look at our total levy for the town of Essex, it's $153,000. And we need to look at, based on that funding model where almost 75% more comes in from that, there's a $400,000 benefit to the town of Essex for what we put in and the programs and things that come back to us. It's one of the best investments we make. And for that, they work on our algae blooms by fighting phosphorus and looking for plants at that. Cipher Systems Greenway, which now connects Essex to Colchester, to McGregor, and it hits the Chrysler Trail, which connects us to Harrow and Colchester. So it's a great investment for all of our residents. The stormwater management. So you look at the dollars invested versus the dollars that return. It's a great service for us, and the work that you do on behalf of our entire region is terrific. So thank you very much for the presentation, and there's great return for the town of Essex on what we do working together. Thank you.
Councillor Vokes.
Thank you, Chair. Richard, if I could, I see the work and I see everything you do in terms of, I couldn't help but notice in your presentation as it relates to flooding. As a matter of fact, in your presentation it said have served people in terms of leaving flooding concerns in the number 1,042. And as you know, I've been working with IRCA. So actually, since February 21st, I've been working with IRCA, and specifically that of your office, because I called your office on February 21st at 9:44 a.m., and prior to speaking with you, I left a message with Kevin Money to call me back, which never happened. And then what I did is I talked to you about a flooding concern that the residents on North Malden, at specifically 387 North Malden, we're having a flooding concern as a result of water runoff, tentatively, and I'll use the word tentatively, coming from IRCA property. And at 9:48 p.m., you had told me, Mr. Vokes, let me look into it, and I will get back with you. And now today, as of speaking to you today, I haven't heard anything from you. And so Mrs. Marchand, when I look at my phone records, has called me 6 times to get an answer. Well, the reality is I guess I could have called you to get an answer, but I don't think I should have to call you to get an answer when you told me you would call me back. And I see in your presentation you're extremely busy. So I was just wondering if somewhere throughout your busy day, if you could find the time to talk to Mrs. Marchand and even maybe myself out in the lobby here before you leave tonight to find out what IRCA is going to do about the flooding and the water runoff problem as it relates to over there, because I'm not saying the full responsibility lies on IRCA, and if it's agreed it's not, that's fine. I just owe Mrs. Marchand some answers, because she come to council, I was looking at the records, a year and a half ago. And a year and a half ago, she was told by Mr. Money representing IRCA that they would deal with it and take a look at it. And now a year and a half later, she's still sitting here trying to get her answer. So I'm hoping that we could sidebar with her tonight before she leaves and see if we could come up with something recognizing that there's been budget deliberations, and I would assume there's a little bit of money there maybe to help with that particular problem if it's the responsibility of IRCA. And I really would appreciate your time on that. Thank you.
And if I may respond to that, because I did communicate with you on that day, as you noted, and I advised that we had in fact met with Keystone Communities, which are the owners of that company, along with some of your councils or the Town of Essex administration to look at the issue that was in that area. Identified to you that as a part of the history there was a railway drainage issue that had been since filled in through encroachment and other impacts on that, which was enhancing some of the flooding issues that was going on in that area. Certainly, the greenway itself is not contributing to the flooding in that area, and that we had identified two Keystone Communities options, which included drainage under the Drainage Act or through municipal drain agreement, and that we would be happy to work with Keystone Communities on dealing with those as a collective issue through those two mechanisms that were there. I understand most recently there's been some further back and forth looking from Keystone Communities, looking for drainage engineers and consultants that might be able to help them begin that part of the process. But from our end, as I expressed to you on the phone that day, we've done our work in terms of meeting with Keystone Communities. We've, as the landowner of those properties, we've worked with the town of Essex to identify what some of the issues and opportunities are to address those problems. And we reached out to Keystone Communities and said if there is a drainage solution through a mutual drainage agreement or through the Municipal Drainage Act, that we would be open to exploring those options on IRCA property, because that is on IRCA property, but that would need to be initiated and funded through the work of Keystone Communities. And that's where we are today. So I don't have anything new to report on that, as I did to you that day on the phone, and that's what I can communicate to anyone in the room today.
And if I could, in our conversation, in all due respect to you, I got to tell you, you never mentioned Keystone one time. What me and you had talked about, and I'll refresh your memory for you a little bit. What me and you had talked about is collectively getting together, and we left it at this because you wanted to talk to Mr. Money. We left it at this. We left it with that you would talk to Mr. Money, and me and you agreed that the town, along with IRCA, along with Mrs. Marchand, along with the Viscount Estates, or what you know now as Keystone, which I never heard before, would all get together, and I said, if need be, I will make arrangements to use the office at Viscount Estates. And you left it at that. And so I was waiting for your call back to see what you were going to do, and if it was required by me to make arrangements with now what you're telling me is Keystone, to have a meeting set up to come up with a resolution to the water problem. So if that's where we are today, Mrs. Marchand, that's where we are today. But I still would like to sidebar with you to get a confirmation of what's required of me as a counselor, to set it up, to have that collective meeting, all of us, to get an understanding. Because the responsibility may be twofold. It may be that of the town and that of, or threefold, I'm sorry, the town, Keystone, and IRCA. But we can't figure that out and assign the proper responsibility until we all get in a room. I don't like doing it over the telephone.
As I said, the landowner, which is responsible for Viscount Estate, has initiated a process, and that's the process that they are taking into account. Your own administration may be able to provide some further updates on that as well. That's all I have.
Okay,
I'll end it at this. I shouldn't be getting answers from you right here at this microphone. Me and you should have had those discussions, as you promised you would do in calling me, and so I could relay to Mrs. Marchand. So we can do it out in the lobby for briefly a couple minutes, if the chair will excuse me, to have my resident meet me out in the hallway to talk to you upon your exit.
And I would request that maybe the town administration join us in that.
That would be perfect. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions on the report? Councillor Bondi.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to say thank you for coming to us. I know you're kind of obligated to come and meet with us, but I support IRCA, and I'm glad we have two really strong reps on IRCA right now carrying our torch in Essex, and it looks great. I was a past IRCA board member, and I see how far the organization has come, and I'm really proud that you are a conservation authority kind of making a lot of headway with the limited levy dollars. I would have been okay always giving more, because I really believe in everything that you do, and thank you. And I wish you success. And there's one pet project that I have that I'm following up on, and you know what it is.
Thanks, Councillor Bondi. Councillor Snively.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. And to you, Richard, a great report, good presentation. And I think, sitting on the board myself, I think as the administrative staff and the board, I think we really provide a very healthy environment for the future. So good job. Thank you.
I may just echo Councillor Bondi's comments, because your municipality is represented very well with Councillor Snively and Councillor Bjorkman. We really appreciate their involvement on our board, not just in terms of how they represent the community of Essex, but also how they represent the region and speak from that watershed perspective. So we very much appreciate the involvement of your board. And as I mentioned earlier, Councillor Rogers as well has been a long-standing supporter out at the Homestead, and we know that we get great support from your council and administration as well.
Councillor Snively?
And further to that, through the chair, thank you for getting back to a situation I had along the lake there. I called you this morning, and good response. You got back right away. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor Bondi, supported by Councillor Rogers. All in favor of the motion? That's carried. Thank you, Mr. Wyma, for coming out this evening. We appreciate the presentation. We now go to reports from administration. First report is Community Services Report number 2018-003 in regard to the Harrow, Ontario Provincial Police backup generator server room connection. And I believe that moved by Councillor Bondi to support the approval of the amount of $9,040, including harmonized sales tax, to have this emergency repair completed. Councillor Bondi, and Bjorkman. Councillor Bjorkman so supportive. Any questions or comments? All in favor? That's carried. Next, we have 8.2, Community Services Report 2018-005. This is in regard to our High Five accreditation certification. Sorry, tripped on that word. But we have, I don't know if Cynthia, did you have something this evening that you wanted to present, or, okay? So we do have staff here this evening. We have Cynthia and Sarah and Jason I see in the audience as well. Sorry, Councillor Bjorkman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I'd like to just speak to a little bit the High Five process. I was able to be a part of the accreditation work this year. I get some good prompting from the staff and helped me understand a lot of the program. We're the only community in Essex County that has this accreditation. Windsor doesn't have it, Kingsville doesn't have it, Leamington doesn't have it with their different centers. We carry most of it through the pool programs, but it's also in all of our kids' programs. And it's a provincially recognized program to show that kids are not just learning the game, but they're learning how to play with each other, be good sports, how to win well and how to lose well, how to not just take part, but to learn the rules, learn the roots of it. It's a terrific program, and we're very fortunate to have a staff that's here, that's dedicated to it, that take the time to get the certifications and go through the process that they need to. So again, like you said, with Cynthia, Sarah, and Jason back there, tremendous job and congratulations, and we'll see in 5 years to do it again. But thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Volks. Are you moving the report then? Thank you. And supported by Councillor Rogers. Any further comments or questions? And we thank you for your hard work in making us successful at this. All in favor of the motion? Carried. Report number 8.3, Fire Report 2018-004. Moved by Councillor Bjorkman, supported by Councillor Snively. Any comments or questions? All in favor? That's carried. Report number 8.4, Corporate Services Report 2018-02. Results of requests for proposal from our corporate banking services. Moved by Councillor Bondi, supported by Councillor Rogers. Any questions to our finance team? Councillor Bondi.
Just one quick, thank you, Mr. Chair. So the interest rate, we're going to be earning more in interest, so we're actually adding 104,000 to our budget each year when we start? Is that correct? What can we do with that?
Is that a question?
Mr. Morrison?
Through the chair, yes, you are correct. Based on estimated balances that were provided in the proposal, we'll be earning approximately 104,000.
Any further questions? All in favor of the motion? That's carried. Thank you. 8.5, Clerk's Report 2018-001. This is in regard to quarter revision for the Shepley Drain in regard to the bridge for Joseph and Susan Chisholm and the updated maintenance schedule.
Support the recommendations.
Councillor Bondi supports the recommendation. Councillor Rogers seconds it. Any questions? So there's two parts here. We'll go with the passing of the bylaw first, and we'll get a second motion for the attendance at the meeting.
Or it could be done as one provisional bylaw and appointing the three.
Okay. So there's a provisional bylaw 1682 that we're reading for a first and second time. And then we are looking to have Councillor Bjorkman, Councillor Bondi, and Councillor Snively for a 5 p.m. meeting on May the 7th. So Councillor Bondi, so that's, so we should be asking these individuals first. So can you make those dates, I guess, is what we're asking. Councillor Snively is saying he cannot make that date. You'll be there? Okay. Okay, so everybody can be there. So that's the motion then. And did we get it? Okay, thank you. So I'll ask all in favor of the motion. That's carried. Thank you. We've got Clerk's Report 2018-02, and I believe that our Deputy Clerk, Lori Brett, is going to be doing a little bit of presentation for us. And this is in regard to changes to the procedural bylaw and Schedule A of a delegation of authority.
Okay, thank you, Deputy Mayor Malash. In your package, and I will try to be as brief as I can, but in your package you received some redlined documents. One is our procedural bylaw. All of the redlining shows what we're proposing either to remove or to change. And the other thing is the Schedule A to the delegation of authority bylaw. And again, the red are the things that we're proposing to change. And the purpose of these few slides is simply to bring to your attention what we're doing and why we're doing it. Okay? So the purpose of the report is to propose changes to these two items, this procedural bylaw and the schedule, so that we can establish the legislative authority for the deputy mayor to carry out specific duties. I've got to get myself organized here. Okay, so the background, as you probably will remember, you passed Bylaw 1648 in October to elect the deputy mayor by general vote. Then we had changes to the Municipal Act. You've heard from us a couple of times about Bill 68 and how it has changed some parts of the Municipal Act and also the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act. We're going to have to come back to you several times on these issues, but we are here tonight specifically to talk about the deputy mayor and empowering the deputy mayor. And then we also had some position title changes as a result of the organizational review, and those are not reflected in those two documents we're talking about tonight, so we've incorporated those changes as well. As you might recall, Section 242 of the Municipal Act has always given authority to appoint someone to act in the place of the head of council when the head of council is absent or refuses to act or the office is vacant. And while so acting, that member has all the powers and duties of the head of council. That's where the section used to end. Now, as a result of Bill 68, they've added this extra little clause. So the deputy mayor in our case would have all the powers and duties of the head of council with respect to the role of presiding at meetings. So it's been a little bit, it's created a little bit of a restrictive, a restriction on the role of the deputy mayor or the person who is acting in place of the chair. The way municipalities are approaching this right now is to rely on Section 231.1 of the Municipal Act, which authorizes municipalities to delegate its powers. And we have already done that through our Delegation of Authority bylaw, and this Schedule A very specifically sets out who has the primary authority to act on a specific matter and who has the secondary authority. That bylaw for us was passed in 2015, and its purpose was to support the efficient management of municipal operations. Okay, so when it comes to the redlining in the procedural bylaw, the things that I just want you to be specifically aware of, because it affects us at election time in particular, is that we've added a new section called 2.2.1 related to the role of the deputy mayor. So the first item that we've added in is this subsection 1. The role of the deputy mayor is to fulfill the normal duties of a member of council as established in section 224. Everybody has that duty, but we've included that as item number 1. Number 2, to assist the mayor in carrying out the mayoral responsibilities as established in section 225 of the Municipal Act and delegated to the deputy mayor in the Town of Essex Delegation of Authority bylaw. So we're adding in those delegated responsibilities under number 2. Number 3, as you all know, role of the deputy mayor is to serve as a member of county council and attend all regular and special meetings of county council, as well as any committees to which the deputy mayor may be appointed. 2.2.2 is about what happens when the mayor is absent, refuses to act, has declared a pecuniary interest, or resigns from office. And in that case, it's the duty of the deputy mayor to act in the place of the mayor, and while so acting, shall have all the powers and duties of the mayor with respect to presiding at meetings, so section 242 of the Municipal Act, and fulfilling the delegated duties set out in the Town of Essex Delegation of Authority bylaw. This section here, 2.2.3, is something that we've added in because we didn't have a clause that addressed what would happen if both the mayor and the deputy mayor were not present and a meeting was called. So this one basically says that in the event that both of those positions are unavailable at the start of a meeting, the clerk will call the meeting to order, and a council member shall be appointed by a resolution of council members present to act as the presiding chair and shall preside over the meeting, have all the powers and authority of the deputy mayor. 2.2.4 is a bit of a restriction. If a board or a committee requires a resolution to appoint its members, and some boards do, for example, we know that ELK Energy requires a resolution, an actual appointment, then the deputy mayor cannot replace the mayor without being so appointed. So this is just that little restriction that the deputy mayor may, under certain circumstances, not be able to substitute for the mayor. That, in a nutshell, is what we've done to the procedural bylaw to empower the deputy mayor. What we've done on top of that is we've added to Schedule A a new section called, it's Section 6, and it lists specifically the duties that the deputy mayor may assist with. So 6.01, authority to represent the municipality at official functions. Number 2, authority to sign undertaking certificates, similar documents required for the completion of a transaction related to the sale of property or long-term leases. 6.03, authority to execute contracts related to the purchase of goods and services. 4, enter into long-term borrowing arrangements. 5, sign checks and other financial instruments. 6, sign funding agreements for grants, subsidies, or other funding mechanisms. 7, review and approve agenda items prior to publishing or distributing an agenda. 8, authority to authenticate by signature all bylaws and minutes of council. So those are the specific duties. Those are things that the mayor already does, and in the absence of the mayor, the deputy mayor, and possibly the clerk or the CAO, perhaps the treasurer may be signing documents and completing transactions, the types of transactions that are listed there. We've done a few other things, a few other small things. So section 2.3 in the procedural bylaw was basically outlined how the election of the deputy mayor would be run. We obviously don't need that anymore, so we have eliminated section 2.3. We've also consolidated on the agenda the items called announcements and reports from council members, and we're proposing that we call it reports and announcements from council members because there's a little bit of confusion as to which item belongs under which agenda item, and we thought this would make it just easier for council to know when to bring forward their items. So those items would be any events that you wanted to bring to the attention of members of the public, and also any reports that you wanted to bring forward in terms of things that you might be doing in the community. We've added a section 2.13 on the chain of office. I think we may recently have received the chain of office, or we're in the process of obtaining the chain of office, and so we felt that we should probably include a section on when the mayor would wear the chain of office. So they would wear the chain of office. Only the elected mayor would wear the chain of office unless they resign the office, and it would be worn at regular meetings and otherwise at the discretion of the mayor. In Schedule A to the Delegation of Authority bylaw, we are proposing amendments to position titles for some non-union staff, as I mentioned a few minutes ago. We've also made some minor amendments to the specific items 7.05, 13.01, 19.01 to align them with the new mayoral duties we put in under item 6.0. And we've also just made a few amendments to reflect actual internal practices. So if we discovered that the clerk was doing something that we thought the treasurer was doing, or vice versa, we've just switched that around so that our actual practices are reflected in that schedule. And those are basically the major changes. Everything else is just something minor that we may have tweaked, and you can see it in the redlining. So I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you, Ms. Brett. Any questions from any council members? Councilor Rogers.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Mayor. As in my perusal of all your changes, I found one little discrepancy, and it's on page 31 of 50 of the bylaw, and it's 4.10.10. It's voting for a motion shall not be permitted. It doesn't say be.
Well, thank
Permitted
you.
by ballot, and you really don't need that, the last part of there, what it says, except for the election of a deputy mayor, which we're not going to be doing anymore.
Oh, very good. Thank you very much.
Thank you. That's
Thank you. If there's no further questions, can I get a motion to receive the report? Moved by Councilor Bonnie, supported by Councilor Rogers. All in favor? That's carried. Thank you. I was hoping that we were going to get to the youth members' report prior to 7 o'clock, but if I can have council, would we be okay to go to 9 before we move further? Okay. Moved by Councilor Bjorkman, supported by Councilor Vokes. All in favor? That's carried. So, Ms. Hoffman, I know that you have to leave early this evening. Was there anything that you had to report before you left? Okay, you're all set. So anytime that you have to leave, we appreciate you showing up this evening and taking part of this council session. This is Clerk's Report 2018-03 in regard to fees for civil marriage officiants. And earlier in the evening, I declared a conflict of interest when we get to this topic, as my wife is a marriage officiant for the town of Essex. So if no one has any objections, I'm going to ask Councillor Snively to take my spot here while I leave the council seats. Thank you, Councillor Snively. Next report is 8.8, Chief Administrative Officer. She has a verbal report in regard to Elk Harrow Service Area momentary outages. Ms. Hunter?
Thank you. Through you, Deputy Mayor Malash. At the last board meeting, there was an update provided to the board members regarding the status of the momentary outages, which I spoke to the CEO, Michael Audette, and he was agreeable to me bringing forward an update to council and to the public. So in his report, he notes that there's been 0 outages since January 25th to the date of his report, which was February 20th. And it's been 60 days since the last momentary outage has occurred. So the average interruption time per month has decreased from 2.4 to 1.7, so there's been quite an improvement there. He has received confirmation from Hydro One that they are replacing what they call the R10 recloser, and just for people who don't know what a recloser is, and I didn't, I had to look it up, it's a circuit breaker that's equipped with a mechanism that automatically closes the breaker after it has opened due to a fault, and it's used on overhead distribution systems to detect and interrupt momentary faults. So Hydro One has confirmed that they will be replacing it. They're replacing it with an upgraded recloser. It's called a G&W Viper. It's a 3-phase recloser. It has been ordered, and they expect to be installing it in September or October. There's a lot of advantages associated with the Viper recloser. In other words, it minimizes the interruptions at the recloser, which is a great improvement. And it has the capability to report back and to be controlled remotely, among other things. But that's the extent of my report back to council. And if there's any questions, I'm sure I can, between either board members or myself, we can answer them.
Thank you, Ms. Hunter. Any questions from our members of council? Motion then? Motion from Councillor Rogers and supported by Councillor Bondi to receive the report, the verbal report. And I'll ask all in favor. That's carried. Thank you. We've already done 9 reports from youth members, and I have nothing this evening from County Council to update on. So we're right into number 11, correspondence, and we have 13 items that we're going to receive as a consent agenda. All 13 as a consent agenda, and then if you have any correspondence that you want to speak to, we can speak to after we pass the motion. So moved by Councillor Rogers and supported by Councillor Snively. All in favor? That's carried. Any pieces of correspondence that any council member would like to discuss? No? All in favor of receiving the correspondence? That's received, or that's carried. Thank you. We're on to item 12, committee meeting minutes. We only have one this evening, Fun Fest Committee for February 15th, 2018. Moved by Councillor Bondi and supported by Councillor Rogers. All in question?
Through the chair, I know they were looking for members to sit in on this committee. have they found more committee members, do you know?
Mr. OJ or Ms. Hunter? Oh, sorry. We'll push that to Mr. Doug Sweet, our Director of Community Services.
Through Deputy Mayor, since advertisement, they've had 2 more members step,
2 more?
and they did attend. 1 attended last meeting, and hopefully 2 at the next
So
one.
how many, further to that, how many members are there on that committee now? Do you know?
6 laymen, 1 counselor. So there's still 2 openings currently.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Thanks for the question, Councillor Snively. Any other questions? All in favor? That's carried. Thank you. Nothing under 13 financial this evening, nothing under new businesses. And we're on to 15 notices of motion. And we do have 15.1, the following motion from Councillor Bondi for user pay for childcare services at the Association of Municipalities Conference for Ontario. And Ms. Bondi, I'll have you, you're moving and I need a seconder, supported by Councillor Vokes. And if you'd like to speak to the motion.
Thank you, Chair Malash. As I'm seeking council support tonight to send a letter to AMO asking them to provide on-site daycare facility services with staffing that is certified. Not asking for a free ride, saying that I would pay for it and anybody that goes to the conference would pay for it. It would be, I'm paying for daycare at home. If I went out of town, I'd pay for that daycare as well. But really, if we want diversity on council, and if we want people and women from the ages of 19 to 45 to be on our councils, and even young men, young fathers that have children that want to go out of town to conferences, we need to ensure that everyone has the same access to opportunities and experiences. And I can tell you firsthand, I believe I'm the only woman in Essex County that's given birth or had a couple of babies while being on council. I can tell you that it comes with a whole bunch of challenges. And one, I'm looking down the line and saying, this AMO conference is a challenge for my family because at home, I can come here and I can line up daycare, but out of town, I can't find safe daycare. So if we want change, we have to challenge the barriers. And I'm asking council to support this tonight, to send a letter to AMO, and hopefully they can investigate providing on-site childcare. Because there are many people that are on council that have families that would go to conferences but can't because they don't have daycare. So, for example, my partner, if I'm going to go to a conference, has to take an entire week off work. He has to take vacation shifts to accommodate my schedule, which I really don't want to ask. He would, but I really want to be independent and I really want to go. So I want an AMO that works for everybody. In the federal government, their budget, and the provincial government, everybody speaks of equality and inclusion, but they don't put their money where their mouth is. So I really think we need to lobby AMO, and this is especially important heading into an election year, and every year. But now, come October, we are going to be looking at a full set of candidates, and those candidates, women and men with young children, should be able to have the same opportunities as everyone else. And I will say firsthand, we don't. We don't. It's a challenge already. So I think we need to start breaking down some of those barriers because I think, for example, our councillor that resigned, he had a family and he had challenges. I have a young family. I have challenges. I don't want to give up being on council for a year or 18 months just because I have children. I'm here. I don't want to miss any meetings. Like, she's 5 days old. She's sitting in the audience. I'm not missing any meetings. I want to be there too. My voice at the table is really important too. So how can we make that happen? Well, we can make that happen by breaking down the barriers. So this is one of the steps I saw that hopefully council will support, and we can keep continuing to break down barriers for people of all ages and sexes to be elected officials. That's it.
Councillor Bjorkman.
Thank you, through the chair. I agree, Councillor Bondi. I think the last AMO, when I came back, I reported that I went to a diversity in how do we get a more diverse population onto our councils. And one of the things that they did bring up when we talked about was providing childcare, especially for conventions like that, through FCM as well, not just AMO, but FCM, any of the opportunities for people with young families to be able to go. So I think there's a receptive audience there, and I would suggest that we don't just send a letter, that we send that letter to our other municipalities and ask them to support this motion, and that we get more municipalities sending that letter forward, that they know there's a need for it, there's a desire for it, and I think based on our meeting last year, that there is an appetite for it.
Councillor Vokes.
Thank you, Chair. Well, as you know, I don't support conferences, but I got to tell you, Councillor Bondi, I support your initiative in doing this. And the reason I support this initiative, it's definitely not gender specific. This is 2018 now, and I think it really talks to the scope as parents as a whole, not specifically to male, female. It just talks about responsibility as a growing family on how you make that provision. So I'm gonna take what you're suggesting, and as a seconder, I want to suggest to council that we stretch the olive branch out to our committees with the town of Essex. If you want to join, and I think it's a great idea, Sherry. I think it's about being liberal, and it's being open to the concerns of people who want to get politically involved or work in their community when opportunity arises. And I think as a council, we could set the trend and lead the tradition by, as a council, agreeing that if somebody sits on one of our committees, that a provision for daycare will be provided for them. And if there's somebody who has a child wants to attend one of our committees or be on one of our committees, it should be known by this town and by this council. That doesn't hinder you from getting involved, because this council and this town leads the way on provision of daycare. So if there's somebody who has a young child, as you have here tonight, on a pre-notification, we just get somebody to come in and sit during that committee period, whether it's an hour or two, and we make the provision for that person to be involved in our community. And it'll set and raise the bar for other municipalities to do the same. I guarantee if we do it within probably prior even to the election, it will be a norm. It will be, because I see your challenges, Sherry, Councillor Bondi. I see it. And you rise to the occasion, and you do a good job at it. But I see the challenges you have on rearing children and being a career woman. But if that opportunity was there for you as a result of all our input and helping, it would be a lot easier for you. So we should be doing that. We should be leading the way on daycare for any mother or father attending one of our meetings. And I would hope council would support that. And if we got to do that through a motion, then I will support. If you make that a motion, I'll second it, and we do it.
So we have a motion on the floor right now already, and I think that this would be something that we have to have a little bit of discussion in regard to. So we'll bring it up at another meeting.
I'm fine with that, as long as the discussions continue on it, because my hat's off for Councillor Bondi for doing that and leading the way on that.
Okay, thank you. So the motion at this point in time is to send a letter to the Association of Municipalities of Ontario, AMO. And right now, I think we're asking for all other municipalities that are members of AMO to offer user-paid childcare services at conferences during conference hours. Yeah, and Ms. Hunter's just asking that right now. Councillor Bondi, did you want to extend it past AMO, FCM, and FCM? Okay. So same with all members of FCM? Okay. Councillor Snively.
To you, Deputy Mayor, is that a letter from each municipality you're asking for to send up?
We're asking for support, so they would send a letter to AMO
Okay,
or FCM as well if they felt that it was a good idea. Further questions?
Just for the record, as a second.
Okay, thank you. I seen you shake your head, yes. Councillor Rogers?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Just on this topic, I certainly do agree with the motion. I think FCM and AMO should come to the party on this. However, if it's not in place before you are attending any further conventions, the major hotels that you would be staying in will often provide childcare services at your request.
Okay, thank you. Counselor Vokes?
Thank you for the last opportunity. In terms of this council leading the way on daycare provision, if council feels as though that's something they would like to entertain, is there opportunity for administration in the second week in April to get something maybe put before council to open up the discussions at a regular council meeting on that? I'm sorry? Second meeting in April, yeah, then that way we know it's there, and thank you.
Thank you. So all in favor of the motion? That's carried unanimously. So now back to new notices of motion, and just please, when you give a notice of motion, make it an actual motion, something that's movable for the future, so that Mr. Roger can have it worded properly for the next meeting. And there's no discussion on notices of motion. So Councillor Bondi, you're first.
Thank you, Chair Malash. I'd like to put forward a notice of motion to be debated at the March 19th council meeting, that administration look at setting up a business closure prevention strategy, and if unavoidable, conduct exit interviews upon businesses closing in the town of Essex. Thank you. That administration look up setting a business closure prevention strategy, and if unavoidable, conduct exit interviews upon businesses closing in the town of Essex.
Thank you, Councillor Bondi. Councillor Vokes.
Thank you, Councillor Bureau. I'd like to put a notice motion forward to discuss the letter that this council had sent to Minister of Health, Eric Hoskins, and his lack of response, and further discussions as to our position as it relates to emergency care in our environment.
Thank you, Councillor Vokes.
Thank you.
So this evening, we're going to move on to reports and announcements from council members. So I'll start at my far right with Councillor Rogers. Thank you, Councillor Rogers. Councillor Snively. Thank you, Councillor Snively. Councillor Bondi.
Thank you, Chair Malash. I think I'd like to just announce that I had a baby on Wednesday, February 28th. The big part about my announcement is I really want to give accolades to Erie Shores Healthcare. I chose to have my baby in the former Leamington Hospital, and the staff there were just amazing. The nursing staff, because I went overdue, I had to deal with an OB and a midwife, and just the overall experience was just phenomenal. So people that are thinking about having a baby, don't discount our county hospital. It really is a really beautiful place to birth. So I just wanted to put my little plug in for Erie Shores Healthcare. Does a fabulous job.
Thank you, Councillor Bondi. Councillor Vokes. Thank you, Councillor Vokes. Councillor Bjorkman. Thank you, Councillor Bjorkman. And I just want to say, Sherry, thanks for being here tonight. You're a real trooper. So now we're on to bylaws number 18. First bylaw is bylaw number 1666, being a bylaw to provide for the Thompson Drain Kelly Strong Bridge and bridge for Davin and Karen Kendrick. Supported by Councillor Vokes and supported by Councillor Rogers. So moved in. All in favor? It's carried. Bylaw number 1676. Wait till I've got it read, please. Being a bylaw to enter into a site plan control agreement between the Corporation of the Town of Essex and the International Door Company. Moved by Councillor Vokes, supported by Councillor Snively. All in favor? That's carried. Bylaw number 16. wait till I read it. Bylaw number 1678, being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of the February 20th, 2018 regular meeting of the Council of the Corporation of the Town of Essex. Moved by Councillor Bjorkman, supported by Councillor Bondi. All in favor? That's carried. Those were all items that were to be read for a third time. Now we have a bylaw to read first, second, and third final reading, and that's bylaw number 1684, being a bylaw to appoint a manager of finance and business services and a deputy treasurer for the Town of Essex. Moved by Counselor Vokes, supported by Counselor Bjorkman. All in favor? That's carried. Last bylaw is a bylaw that requires a first and second reading, bylaw number 1683, being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of the March 5th, 2008 regular meeting of the Council of the Corporation of the Town of Essex. Moved by Counselor Vokes and supported by Counselor Bondi. All in favor? That's carried. Thank you. Looking for adjournment. Counselor Vokes and Counselor Rogers. All in favor? It's carried. Thank you.